Welcome to Business Minds. I'm Cindy Bird. I'm a business owner, educator, and thinking partner with a passion for helping people and businesses thrive. I'm so glad that you're choosing to join me for this week's program and wanted to share with you a little bit about what Business Minds offers if you're tuning in for the first time. Business Minds is focused on helping business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs, and just people in the business world in general to connect and then collaborate, talk about trends, issues they're facing, challenges that they've dealt with. The idea is to bring people together to learn from each other and then to collaborate to uncover perhaps insightful solutions that they hadn't thought of before. There's so much that we can learn by connecting and collaborating with others in the business world. And in fact, I did that just this morning. Had a wonderful opportunity to connect with a young lady who is an aspiring entrepreneur. She's a student in the business program at Robert Morris University, where I spent about 15 years roughly teaching both full-time and part-time as a professor there. But she needed to interview someone who was a small business owner for a class that she's in right now. And she chose to interview me. And we spent about an hour, 15 minutes together this morning. But Mariama Ford, I want to give a shout out to you. What a delight it was to meet you this morning and to connect with you. It was an honor to share information with you about my business image potential, but more importantly, I enjoyed learning about what you want to do and how much of a difference you are going to make in this world, not just in the business world, but in the world in general. She's an up-and-coming individual, ladies and gentlemen. I know she's going to do great things. So thank you again, Mariama, for inviting me to be interviewed this morning. It was great. This is gardening season, as I mentioned last week on the show. I'm an avid gardener, so I look forward to getting out and getting in the dirt and moving my plants around. They have feet at my house, my husband says. But I love to grow things, help people grow, help businesses grow, and of course, help plants grow. But oftentimes when you're starting up a business, there are growing pains that go along with it. So that's our theme for the month of May. And we're going to continue that theme today by sharing a really inspiring story with you. I'm going to be sharing the story of Melissa Snover, who currently she's building a startup business called Katjes Magic Candy Factory. She's based in Birmingham, United Kingdom, and she does business globally. What's really inspiring about Melissa's story is not just how she's dealt with the growing pains of the Magic Candy Factory, but the fact that she has owned several businesses. This is her third venture, actually. And she's been a business owner since the age of 23, and a successful business owner, I should say. So I guess she's what you'd call a serial entrepreneur. And I want to tell you a little bit of background. First of all, she's 36 now, so she's been in the business world for a while. And again, the Magic Candy Factory is her third venture. But I found it interesting how she came up with the idea for the Magic Candy Factory. Her first business venture was a finance-based business. She sold that business, and then she got into the confectionery industry. So her first business was called Goody Good Stuff. Interesting name there, easy to remember though. She focused on making vegan sweets. That was her specialty. And what happened while she owned Goody Good Stuffs was she noticed that customers were starting to ask her about being able to make customized candies according to designs that they had come up with. So interesting, she's paying attention to that, noticing that she's getting a lot of requests for that. At the same time, Goody Good Stuff has grown tremendously in sales and revenue, and it's also become a very marketable business too. In other words, sellable. So she took that trend that she was seeing in her customer requests and the fact that she had a successful business that she could use to leverage starting something different, and she came up with the idea for the Magic Candy Factory, which is all designed about offering the customer the chance to make customizable sweets. So she didn't just plunge in right away. She did a lot of research on 3D printing. So she's capitalizing on a new technology that's out there. She also did a lot of research just in general on printing edible sweets, particularly gummy type of candies. As you can imagine, they would lend themselves better to that type of technology. But she researched the ability for customers to be able to design and make the candies on the spot. And along with that, she researched any unique safety and health regulations that might go along with doing 3D printing of candies on the spot. The other thing that she did before launching was she used an online startup incubator to connect with people who shared the same interest. And she ultimately connected with a gentleman in Germany whose family had been in the confectionery business for over 100 years. And connecting with him was one of the best things she could do, because he ultimately then became a partner, because he shared her same passion. He saw that that could really be a viable business, and so became a partner in the Magic Candy Factory with her. She still wasn't ready to launch. She'd done all of her research. She'd found a partner. Then she decided to test the product for 3 months before actually launching the customizable sweets in 2016. So the Magic Candy Factory has been in business for a couple of years now. So now she has patents on the products. She leases 3D printers. She licenses software and the ingredients. So what she's really become is a business-to-business type of organization too. Ultimately, the consumer is the end user, the end consumer of the product, but she's bringing other businesses on board to be able to use her technology, use her software that's patented, and so forth. So that's allowed her to even branch off into another revenue stream, and that is to do consulting on 3D printing of food products and also marketing to the entertainment industry. She is really inspiring to recognize all of those opportunities. In only 18 months, she turned a profit with the Magic Candy Factory, and she also expects her revenue to double annually. I think a lot of her success has to do with the why behind the Magic Candy Factory. She said that she simply wanted people to enjoy the sensation of creating. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Doesn't mean she didn't have any challenges along the way as she was growing her business and also growing her team to be able to help her accomplish all of this. She openly says she dealt with the same challenges that any startup does: limited resources, limited time, limited capital. Also, finding the right people and the right funding partners were difficult for her. The partner she found, as I mentioned earlier, she was fortunate to connect with someone who was a very experienced confectioner who shared her passion for being able to make customized candies on demand. I love the way he phrases it, though. He says what he calls making people into their own Willy Wonkas. That's a visual right there, right? Really fun. And he's also been a mentor to her. So that was really something that helped her work through some initial challenges. She also waited until she knew she had a real business before going to market. All of the things I mentioned earlier that she did. And she said she's lucky that the 3 employees that she hired initially are still with her today. That says a lot for what the business world has become. I think turnover is something that all businesses deal with, and startups, it's about finding the people who connect and share your passion for what the business is all about, and keeping them engaged and interested in the work that they're doing, and embracing your why just as much as you do. So, the biggest challenge, though, that she said she dealt with was that the Magic Candy Factory is such a unique concept, and I would agree, there was no roadmap to follow. Nobody else was out there doing anything like that, and nobody had blazed the trail before us, as she puts it. So, along with that, she said her other biggest challenge was finding reliable partners in the supply chain. With a product like she has, it can be suppliers, of course, of her printers, suppliers of the ingredients. She had some challenges along the way with one supplier in particular when she did a big trade show in New York City, that the vendor was supposed to ship her 12 printers, and the printers arrived, but they were not in working order. So she and her staff had to work around the clock, literally, to get these printers up and running in time for this big trade show. So she really says that that challenge of finding reliable partners in the supply chain is something that she works hard to overcome. Another thing that she talked about, though, and this ties into her why, I think, in a big way. She, remember her why is she wants people to enjoy the sensation of creating. Well, the close partner to creating, of course, is innovation. So the question posed to her was, how do you continue to innovate? And she said the motto in their business is innovate or die, always be in beta. She calls this the life force of the business. So Snover and her employees continually innovate. They do it based on what they learn. That's really significant. I loved that. And that inspired me to feel rejuvenated about what Business Minds is all about. We look at Business Minds, or I look at Business Minds as being that venue where you come together, you bring people together to put their creativity to work collaboratively, and you end up coming up with something that didn't exist before. But in her case, she's making customizable candies, so they use what they learn. How do they use it? Well, they take very sophisticated software that they use to track trends and to track information, and then they make changes in real time. So being small helps her in that case. You can't necessarily move that quickly in a very large corporation. So being small helps her to obtain feedback and then to make changes in real time, as she describes it. So an example that she gave was she has this software that gives her information daily. So she might find from this software that there's a strawberry festival coming up in some part of the world. And so that clues her in that, of course, strawberry flavored candies are going to be what she needs to focus on in that particular part of the world. Being a global business, she also focuses a lot on being mindful of the customs that vary from one area of the world to another, one country to another. For example, she's learned that in China, selfies are very, very popular. In the Middle East, not so much. So while you might say, well, how does that connect with customized gummy candies? Well, we all know people love to take selfies of what they're doing in the moment. So that plays into how she's marketing the candies and how she's encouraging people to be ambassadors, probably, of her candies out there in the world. Oftentimes when you're looking at a startup and you're thinking about growing pains, you're so in the moment that you're not even thinking, well, what will I be doing a year from now? What will I be doing 2 years from now? But when Snover was asked what she sees as her biggest challenge over the next 1 to 2 years, she was pretty quick to point that out in her story. And that is rapid growth. you can imagine she is growing pretty rapidly and at a fast pace. When I told you she's turned a profit in less than 18 months, that right there is a signal of some pretty fast growth. And just the fact that she's operating globally lends itself to growth opportunities as well. What she said is the biggest challenge is how to compromise that rapid growth with the fact that she doesn't want to lose the passion and the uniqueness that is the heart and soul of the business, what she calls the lifeblood of the business. So that's great advice. You do need to think about your growth strategy as a startup. Where are you going to be a year or two, 5 years from now? How will you manage that growth effectively so that you don't lose that passion, you don't lose sight of your why and what you're really focused on being able to bring to people? I see a lot of small businesses over the time since I've been a coach and a consultant that will move away from their core business because their core business is suffering. So in other words, they start adding things, adding products, adding services that don't quite fit, but they're trying to rescue their core business instead of making sure that they haven't lost sight of what their core business is. I remember a gift shop that was in the local area, probably about 15, 16 years ago, about the same time that I was starting up Image Potential. And because I focus on branding and brand strategy a lot, what was going on with this business caught my attention. And first of all, it was a little confusing as to what this business was all about to begin with. And then there was an article in the paper about this gift shop business, and it became more clear that she specialized in gifts from around the world. So if you went into the shop, there'd be a section with gifts that you could purchase that were from Ireland, and another set from Africa, and so on. And I thought, that's different, that's unique. People like to be able to buy things from around the world. Keep in mind, this was before really the explosion of online shopping was there. So it could have worked. And I noticed one day when I drove by this business, because I drove by there every day, I saw a bunch of Beanie Babies lined up in the window and these flags hanging outside of the business. And I thought, okay, what's going on? Her core business had lost its focus. That was a sure sign her core business was struggling. And so she was trying to capitalize on what was kind of a waning trend in the business, or in the Beanie Baby business, and just was adding hodgepodge items. I went in there a second time and could tell that the business had gone away from its core. So I love what Snover is suggesting, that you do want to grow. Sometimes you start growing a little too fast, or you grow in the wrong direction. So being mindful and having a growth strategy in place is really important. When asked what she would do differently, which is always a good reflection piece, I love what she said. Snover said she would tell herself it's going to be okay. Oftentimes when we're in the midst of all those challenges that we start out with and all the new challenges that come up, because it's all new. If you've not been in business before, these are things you've never experienced before, and it can be overwhelming. And you might think that you're not going to make it, you're not going to be successful. So I love what she says. Tell yourself it's going to be okay. She says, because what she realized as she worked through those challenges, that each experience that came to her, none of them were fatal. And she realized that what she needed to use them for was teaching herself. Let them teach you, let them make you better. In her words, you need to go through them to get where you are. Love that. And I also love that as a serial entrepreneur, she's willing to share some tips on what she would tell another entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur who's thinking of starting a business. And she highlighted 3 key things. First of all, find something you're passionate about. She says you've got to have that passion in order to make it through what's going to be a difficult journey. And when I read those words that Snover said, it reminded me a lot of what my guest last week said. Sue Sanders was very clear that the passion that she and her co-founder, Lynette Williams, have for sign-on ASL education has carried them through and the last couple of years of being a startup, and continues to fuel them to move forward and do the great work that they're doing. So totally agree with that. The second point that Snover said she would share with someone who's thinking of starting a business is that at the same time, make sure you're thinking about the consumer or the end user and not just yourself. Yes, it's your passion, but don't start a business or don't launch a product just because you think it's cool or because you want bragging rights about something. Do it, she says, because it's to make someone's life better. And her advice is great. She says those are the kinds of products that will always have a place and ultimately be more successful. She said always focus on the customer, focus on serving people, and making people's lives better. I think if you watch any of the Shark Tank episodes, you can almost always see that those products that people bring on that solve a problem or that do make people's lives better are the ones that the sharks also recognize as being more successful. The third thing that Snover said she would tell someone who's thinking of starting a business is that building trust is one of the keys to setting up a successful business. Absolutely. Trust is the foundation for every relationship in our lives. And having your customers see you as trustworthy and working hard to earn that trust is number one priority, in my opinion. Mariama asked me this morning, what did I think had made my business successful? And I said, building relationships, no doubt, is probably the key thing that has helped my business be successful. And not just building them, but maintaining those relationships over time is really done through trust. And so I love that. I love that Snover is saying the same thing. She says, when you walk into a room, for no matter what reason it is, always be prepared. She's saying, of course, that's one of the ways that you earn someone's trust. Think about the customer, what they want, and focus everything on that. So true. I do a lot of presentations at conferences, or I do a lot of workshops, a lot of lunch and learns, and I teach people about public speaking as well. And I've learned certainly being prepared is key if I'm going to earn the trust of my audience as someone that they see as credible, someone who's believable, someone who they want to listen to. I've got to be prepared when I walk into that room and have my presentation organized, have my workshop organized, know what I'm talking about, know the subject matter. And it starts with thinking about them. It starts with thinking about my audience first, or my client first, who I'm doing that lunch and learn for, or that employee workshop. I'm starting with an audience analysis. They are my customer at that moment in time. Who are they? What is it that they want to know? What do they already know about the topic? What is it they want to learn? What are those outcomes that we're searching for, we're working towards? And making sure that then everything I do up to that point is in the interest of my audience and what they're looking for. So I chuckle sometimes when I get a request to speak. They'll say, well, could you send us your presentation in advance. We'll have it preloaded, and they want it right away. And I'm quick to respond and say, I customize every presentation. You might get a little bit of what this group heard from me about before. You might get a little bit of this learning over here, but I'm going to customize it according to that audience. And I think that's what Snover is saying, and that's what drew her to this sensation of creating. It's almost like I want my audience to feel like they're creating along with me by gaining new insights, seeing things in a different combination or a different mix that they hadn't quite considered before. So that's just really a blessing to be able to do that kind of work. She also said, always be thinking about how you can deliver the best possible goods, services, whatever it is, to meet their needs. Yes, you have business goals that you're trying to achieve, but it's about serving the people who are buying your product or purchasing your services first and foremost. Very important there. So I've been sharing with you today an inspiring story about Melissa Snover. Her name is spelled Snover, if you're interested in looking up information about her. And she is the founder and owner of the Magic Candy Factory out of Birmingham, United Kingdom. I wonder if Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are going to be making any customized candies for the royal wedding this weekend. We'll have to tune in and see. I wanted to also take a look ahead to the next couple of weeks and what you can look forward to on Business Minds. Next week, which is May 22nd, my guest will be Michelle Bohm. Michelle is founder and owner of Inspired Style Salon and Boutique, which is in Pekin, Illinois. And she is passionate about what she does, as well as very insightful and savvy when it comes to running a business. So I know you're going to learn a lot from her. We'll be discussing the growing pains that she's experienced as a startup business. And on May 29th, I will have a guest, Melody Norton, who is a photographer with an exciting new startup business in the area. Anxious to hear from Melody too and what growing pains she's experienced as a startup business as well. I also wanted to let the viewers know that I'm currently booking guests for the months of June and July. My theme for June is risky business, and while I'm not able to get Tom Cruise to be a guest on the show, what we will be discussing on the show, that I'll be asking guests, I should say, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken in business? You know, we're moving into the next quarter of the year. It's time to be thinking about plans for the remaining months we have left in 2018 and beyond. So maybe time to think about taking some kind of a risk, a smart risk with your business. And then my theme for July, because July in the Midwest here tends to still be a vacation month, and not just in the Midwest, but a lot of people take their vacations in July, got me to thinking about what I call the great vacation debate. In other words, do I take vacation time? Do I not take vacation time? There is still a tendency in the United States to not take vacation time for a number of reasons, which we'll get into more in July with that topic. And then there's also certainly a lot of arguments for why we should be taking that needed time off. Also want to remind you how you can connect with me. Business Minds is on Facebook, so please follow, like, and comment on our page. You can email me at businessminds@email.com. I'm always looking for your feedback, for your suggestions about future topics, And just in general, what would you like to see featured on Business Minds? Now that you know the themes for June and July, you can go ahead and post some comments about what you'd like to hear from my guests, and maybe we can hone in on some specific things for you there. Most of all, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been my pleasure to spend some time with you here on Business Minds. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next week.
PeoriaLife.com. PeoriaLife.com.